Ready? All right, cool. So, surprise, we have a website.
Yay.
www.tennesseecreativecouncil.com. Nice and simple. It's still being developed. I'll give you that caveat. And it's still, stuff is still being posted. Even all of the text isn't up there now. But if you're talking to people about the program, telling people what you're doing, et cetera, point them to the website. I mean, there's enough up here right now, and more goes up every single day. So don't have any hesitation towards pointing people to the website. What's got on the website so far and what it's going to have, I'll just walk you through it real quick. Homepage, of course, our mission statement. Technically, we're a social value agency. It's one of our pages that is not done yet. But it's going to define exactly what a social value agency is. We're going to have a list of our projects and updates on the projects on here as well. In addition to that, we have a contact portal for everyone that's slowly being developed. So if you're a student at UT, et cetera, it's got contact forms, ways to get to us. It also is going to have, this is why we need pictures of everybody, it's going to have all of our pictures on there. The many faces of the Tennessee Creative Council. As of now, Jackson's is the only usable picture that's on here right now. Christian, your picture is my favorite out of all of these. Yeah, it turns you sideways for some reason. So we're working on it. We're gonna get some new pictures of everybody over tonight and the next week and following. But it's nice, you know, it shows you who we are, what we're doing. You can mouse over each person, tells you more about the student. Next week we're gonna have like a form for everybody to fill out if you don't want any information about you on the website. Don't feel like you have to, but it's nice. I mean, people are very interested and they want to know who the students are in the organization. The school administrators do, business leaders that I talk to, and this is a good way for them to get to know you. Also, if you have a special role within the organization, if you're an administrator, if you're head of PR, et cetera, we'll list that on there. So it's a little bit more credential for you. In addition to that, this is going to be my favorite part of the website. We're going to have an online forum as well as an online information dispersal unit through this website, in which next week you will be assigned, or you'll assign yourself a login, username and password, and you'll be able to log into the Tennessee Creative Council website. You'll be able to get our information from there. It should replace the drive partially, and then we'll also have an online forum, a way to communicate with each other on these projects, and everything else will be dispersed through the website. Cool. Everybody like it? Yes? Cool. All right, it's up there. Next, let's talk about tonight. We got a lot of research done last week. It's really nice. A fair amount, actually, enough to move on to a certain extent. So tonight, moving on, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to catch everybody up and we're going to present where we are exactly. I know this is a very complex subject, and it's something that people have a little bit of a hard time wrapping their heads around, so we're going to go over what we found last week one more time, and then each individual is going to present what they found over the last week. Some of the people that did research are on their way still, so they'll be coming in and presenting as they get here. And then we're going to look to see if we need to do any more research, and then we're going to begin our brainstorming process. So for those of you that are new, we find the problem, we research the problem, we brainstorm possible solutions, and then we pick a solution, and then we go and move ahead with actual development of that solution. So, our research. So what we're doing is Tennessee Public Schools financing. If this is redundant, bear with me, just make sure everybody's on the same page. Tennessee schools receive only about 10% of their total financing from the national government. That leaves 90% of financing to the states. Within that 90%, you can see on the left pie graph, you have your localized sales taxes, you have your other taxes within the state, and then you have your localized property taxes. What that realistically says is that nearly 45% of all localized funding, which makes up 90% of funding in total, comes from very localized sources. What that means for Tennessee is, all right, so got the grand majority of schools funding comes from localized sources, right? So that means that more affluent areas, people, just join us over here, man. More affluent areas, people, or areas where people make more money, put more money back into the system where they're from. That means that those areas receive a lot of funding, those schools receive a lot of funding, and that means that areas that don't have people like that, people or areas where they're less affluent, get less funding for their school research. What that means also is that those schools have less opportunities. They have less extracurriculars, they have older textbooks, they have less student involvement, they have less community involvement, and what we found last week was that leads to statistically worse performance. What that leads to eventually is less successful alumni. That means less money in the community. It means that you have to restart this whole cycle. It's a perpetuating cycle. So these schools get trapped in the cycle of, if your community doesn't have any money, your schools don't work well, and then you just get stuck there. It's not a good situation. We also found last week that more money means more test scores. Cool. That's where we are. All right, so tonight is the list of people that we asked nicely to do a little bit of research over the last week, and they're going to supplement our general research. So we've got Hannah doing our PPPs, we've got Lindsay doing the Harlem Children's Zone, Christian covered the VCs, our venture capitalists, Carly, we did the education-focused nonprofit organizations. Meg's on her way. She did recent Tennessee legislation, and Xander tackled the localized business taxes designed to fund public education, which is actually something that's going on in West Tennessee right now. So what's going to happen is Adam's going to take over at this point. Yep. He'll be in capable hands, and I'm not going to get anybody sick. Cool. All right, guys. I'm sorry for checking out earlier. I really am. But have a good night, and I look forward to watching the video. See you guys later.
See you, Mark.
If he doesn't let you out by 8:30, hit him with something.
This is Caitlin.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Hannah, do you want to go first? As your first on the list, and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So I researched public-private partnerships, and what that is, it's private companies investing in public education. And there are different kinds of PPPs, which is what they're called, and the kinds that I found were management, which is basically just how the school is like set up administratively, operational, which is the like financial and educational like things that go into the school to make it work. Educational services, which is placing students in different schools, facility availability, which is just infrastructure and building maintenance, and then the facility availability with educational services, which has both infrastructure and the different educational inputs and outputs. And so what it is that private businesses can invest in public schools. And some pros that they had was that it makes education, it turns it into kind of a competitive business, and it gives private companies more reasons to invest in specific programs that they like or they want to build. And it also gives public schools reasons to like increase their education programs that they have, and it gives them an incentive because they could get like a private sponsorship. And it also has a flexibility of agreement because it's between a specific school and a company, so you can like form it to whatever your specific needs are. And the government can regulate it, and they can define specific requirements and measurable outcomes that your PPP needs to accomplish in order for you to like continue getting the financing or the resources or whatever you're getting from your private company. Some things that were negative that could happen is that it could lead to the privatization of education, which a private company could invest solely in a school to like improve the image of like their business, or they could like take over the school and have it do like specific things like geared towards their business. Like if like there's one program through Intel, but they could do it so that the school would only be allowed to like have like Intel products in their school, which isn't really what it's for. And it also could create a larger socioeconomic gap, which is what we're trying to avoid, because there is a possibility that businesses will only choose to invest in schools that are already doing well instead of in the poor public school system, because it is up to the individual private companies and organizations of where they want to invest and what schools they want to invest in. And there's PPPs that are already like in place, and in 2010 Obama passed the Educate to Innovate initiative, which I had never heard of, but I looked it up and it's geared towards like math, science, and technology and engineering. And Intel did one, and they launched a 10-year $200 million teaching campaign where they take teachers into their like Intel facilities and give them the extra training that they need for like specialized like math and sciences and advanced placement courses, and then they put them into the public schooling system. And there's all these are basically the same.
There's actually a lot of companies that are taking that initiative, like to support science, math, and technology education. So we just did a case study for like Time Warner Cable and how they did something in like 2010 to like connect more minds, or I don't know, something like that.
Have the teaching campaigns been successful?
A lot of them are spaced out over like 10 to 20 years, and they're just in the beginning stages because it started in 2010, so they're still in the process of like training the teachers and getting like PBS is doing one that isn't really being installed until like 2015, so things are still like
still exist.
Things are still like in the works to like get it there, because it takes the process of like teaching the people who are supposed to be teaching our children.
So what's the payoff?
So the payoff is that different countries around the world have already like started using PPPs, and there's a correlation between the private provision of education and the positive qualities of education. And there's like a straight correlation and it's from the study by the Program of International Student Assessment, and it says the private sectors can deliver high quality education for lower costs to the public schools. And so the payoff is that you're going to get teachers who are more informed and have more resources. A lot of them are about like sharing teacher resources, and they also implement teachers into schools that are hard to get that are hard to employ in like lower income areas or areas that have a lot of different schools. It's hard to employ teachers that you like specifically need, because you need like a math teacher, and you don't always have like a math teacher available, and they'll send you a math teacher that is like fully capable of teaching math to like everyone who needs to learn math. But there's just like 5 different initiatives. It's all up on the drive if you want to look at them. A lot of them are they have really similar little things. Ideas.
Let's just have everyone sort of like take notes of the pros and cons, what they like about each thing, and then we'll just like get all of our blah out when we just see everyone's research, and then that way you can do it more cohesively. Sound good? Yeah. So does that wrap up the PPPs? Awesome, great job. That was very thorough. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I did the Harlem Children's Zone, and it started as the Reedland Centers for Children and Families in 1970, and then it slowly became the Harlem's Children's Zone. And it started as a 1-block program, but it was spread to more than 90 blocks in that area, and it is created in an effort to address the many problems poor families are facing. The organization began with a budget of $6 million, and this is in 1997 when this little 1-block program started. And they have a 10-year plan to grow to $46 million. At the moment, much of the funding is private, but they're also using fundraisers and other benefactors. I think the thing that's most that ties into education the best is that the Harlem Children's Zone offers what they call the Promise Academy, and this is 3 different schools. It's set up very similar to elementary, middle school, and high school. And The schools have an extended school day and an extended school year, which is a way to help students spend more time on areas that they have more difficulty with. And they also offer extra classes like music classes. They have a chess club, and they're really excited about how much it's helping children. For instance, one of the statistics, the 8th graders who came in when they were in 6th grade, which were really below the level they need to be, scored 87% on or above grade level on the latest statewide math test, while when they entered 2 years ago, they were only 40% at the rate.
So is it a selective program?
No. Anyone is able to come. It's free for students. They need to be in the Harlem community. The funding is provided from donations, and I believe they mentioned it costs about $5,000 a student. But
Their cost or the students' cost?
it's free for the students, but each student is basically worth $5,000 towards.
Are there like certain organizations and programs like in Harlem that are like not responsible, but have
Like benefactors?
Yeah.
They talked about how I'm sorry.
What's the program called again?
It's called the Harlem's Children's Zone.
And what was the specific?
The specific school is called the Promise Academy.
Okay.
And it's a private school.
It's a charter school.
Okay.
And then I read about, I want to do more research about this because I kept finding more and more areas where they've tried to duplicate this program. One particular instance is in Durham. I'm pretty sure it's in North Carolina. And they're saying that it's not doing as well. And there's putting a lot of it because they say that Harlem has such a dedicated community that's been fueling this Harlem's Children's Zone, and they don't have the community in Durham that's as motivated
Is it just
towards
that?
helping it.
Is it actual like?
They say they don't have the man who pretty much founded the Harlem Children's Zone. This is his baby, so to speak. His name's Geoffrey Canada, and he's been on a lot of things lately, just talking about this school. But there's the people. I'm sorry. The people in Durham are saying that they don't have they need a figure similar to Canada who can help lead the way, because he's a strong presence and has been helping make the Harlem's Children's Zone grow a lot more.
Okay.
Where was the Promise Academy established? Or and the Harlem Children's Zone?
Harlem's Children's Zone was in 1997.
And that's what it converted from just being the Breedland Center?
It's been Harlem's Children's Zone for it's been interchangeable with Reedland's Center for Children and Families, and as it grows, it's Harlem's Children's Zone because it was referred to as both in different sources.
I think it's interesting to note the difference, or the discrepancy between, earlier we were saying that perhaps more money per student means higher grades, but here we see that they're spending an average of $5,000, which is just a little bit below what Tennessee spends, yet we're running way worse than, say, someone who, if we're going off that as being a good reference point, I forget what state it was, but it ranged between, we were lower towards 5, and then most are right around, or the highest are right around $9,000 or $10,000 per student, but they don't necessarily have better schools. So maybe it does come back to that abstract sort of leadership X factor.
Yeah. They also seem to be a lot more selective with their teachers. They want really dedicated teachers, and they have to be because they're putting in longer hours at the school.
It's
and
a private company, right?
think so. And then the school year's extended.
Have they tried to replicate it in any other places besides Durham?
Yes, but I haven't done as much research on the other places. There's like they're called promise neighborhoods, and the idea is similar. There's in Kinston, North Carolina, Athens, Georgia, and then places similar to that, but
Okay.
I'm going to do more research into those particular cities.
Excellent. So good information about how how maybe private forces, private market solutions, so to speak, how they work. Christian, venture capitalist.
Last week, I brought forward some information about how venture capitalists have been seeing a lack of success in the education system, and how they have been proposing to fix it. And one of their arguments is with every other industry, and they mentioned medicine mostly, technology and different private sectors have funded those industries, and they've helped out the industries immensely. Now, so maybe onto education, and I have some things pulled up here. Internationally, it is shown that private sector can improve school performance through competition, accountability, and autonomy. And the best results with private sector funding is through competition, where they enhance it through choice, and disadvantaged areas are targeted, and there's a lot of autonomy at the school level. Now, there's a lot of criticisms about venture capitalists. Let's see.
How are disadvantaged areas, how are they encouraged to be targeted? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that point, I was actually going to leave that out. It was very vague in the stuff that I found on it. But basically through competition, which makes sense because if they're helping to pay for certain things and you go into a good school district, there's individual pressures on the students to succeed, and so they will do better. Though that is not always a good thing. Let's see. Venture capitalists, they've started funding American school systems because they see a failing system and they want to compete with skills on a global age. And the biggest thing with venture capitalists in this area is innovation. That is their main target here. Let's see. One of the larger companies is called Common Core Standards. It has been officially adopted in 46 states. And what they've been doing, which has been successful, is creating incentives for innovation at the heart of the school system. And the school system is that they are targeting are just K through 12 schools. They didn't really go into specifics about how it was successful, but they were discussing that.
What are the incentives that how does that whole system work? Like, you create something innovative and then you get some sort of incentive for it? Can you explain that?
I think they talked about how the school systems have had a lot of private funding for many years, but no one's really noticed it. Like paper, pencils, different things have been donated, and as of late, software technology has been donated, and I think those two things, software and technology, have been a large factor, like a large incentive for schools. Let's see.
It's more like supplies oriented incentives?
Yes.
Okay.
And couple things I found against venture capitalists are, for many people, it's hard to justify their investments. And if you don't have a lot of people investing, then the outcome of that is going to be affected. I think, let's see if I can find the quote. It makes sense, really. If you don't have a lot of people funding money and working towards this innovation, then you won't be able to reach that goal. But they found, for many of these companies that are funding other companies to innovate technology and make it better, there's been a conflict of interest where the public school systems won't always allow them to test out their technology or software, which is not so good because they won't allow new usage of, let's say, these textbooks or new type curriculum type things unless they've gotten good testing and good scores and all that good stuff. But they can't test it because they won't allow them to test it, so it's holding them back a little bit. And they've been calling for working together, the bureaucracy, the politicians, and the school systems with the venture capitalist companies. And really, the quote for this is, "We need to close the gap between developer and user so that the products are not designed in a vacuum." Right now, with venture capitalists, there's just a push and pull against the private sector and the public sector, and people not wanting this change to come because they feel like that the tradition that they've grown up knowing is going to leave them. And the quote that I'll leave you on is, "When even a famously egalitarian society like Sweden is embracing private sector innovation to help improve schooling, our own path should be clear." That's venture
What's the last part of that?
Our own path should be clear.
Do you know how these? Is it just purely like multiple investors coming together to invest in one school area, or is it like a contract given out by the government to an investor?
It's private investors, and the way that they do it is around their own school areas. They meet up with their buddies in the companies, and they just kind of pool money, but most of the money goes towards different software and technology companies.
Okay. So it's like really just like sort of informing these software companies who are creating these educational tools and how they can create better products, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's also benefiting the students.
Yes. Because they talked a lot about how the pace nowadays with technology, like if you think of the iPhone or Apple products, it used to be like every month there's a new Apple product out. The technology was changing and innovating at a high pace, and they were discussing how education is kind of back in the Stone Ages here, or the Dark Ages, I mean, and how they need to get up to modern day with accepting change.
Do you think it's just technological, like maybe like having some sort of like electronic tablet in the classroom or what have you, or is it just like really, is it like the curriculums themselves?
It's more curriculum. Tablets, there wasn't anything about tablets, but they are more for substance and less flashy.
So how do you make a curricula more technological in nature?
What they're doing.
Yeah, how do you go about it?
They actually didn't really go into much detail besides discussing new innovations, but the sense that I got from it was different things. I don't know if anyone used to have like Edline back in the day in school, or RenWeb, I believe, different programs or things that schools could use. Edline was a phone service. You'd call in, your teachers would leave a message, and it would tell you like, this was your homework due for today. In 3rd grade I used that, and then through high school I used a essentially Blackboard, and it's these tools like that they're kind of going towards. And then of course different virtual tools for different science courses as well.
Somebody else have any questions?
something that like everyone's trying to do? Or is it-
I think everyone that has had interest in it has been moving towards technology, but venture capitalists in this, in most educational, they just focus on technology and innovations.
Okay.
On a large part, I'm sure there's some that will, fund different things, but
Yeah.
that's the main point.
All right. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah. Okay. So I did educational nonprofits in Tennessee, and I found a few different ones. A lot of them were mainly based on like teachers and how, bettering like the teaching ability within Tennessee is going to, in the future help students. Okay, so I found Tennessee Education Association, and they basically their mission statement is to promote, advance, and protect public education, the education profession, and the rights and interests of their members. And they provide like scholarships and grants and awards to help support like all the members of this program. And so they want to have like basically through political voice and stuff, they basically like educate everyone on all of the policies and like legislation going on with education, so that they can have all of their members have a huge voice and kind of like fight for Tennessee.
These are members who are teachers?
Yeah, it's it's like members and like their family members. I got all this stuff pulled up, but but they give like scholarships and grants and awards to help like children who are part of it, and like teachers who are part of it, basically. So they have like conferences and workshops all through Tennessee, and they're for future teachers, like new teachers, minority teachers, all that kind of stuff, just like to make sure that we're putting the best teachers out there for all of our students. And I put all the stuff up on the website, like their website and everything, and all the stuff that I've written. And then I looked at Friends of Literacy, which is a private nonprofit, and it's just basically people in different communities. They come together, like people in corporations and all that kind of stuff, and they provide funding and volunteers that support education and life skill training to adult students, and they try and increase literacy with adults in the communities, because in like Appalachia of Tennessee, not necessarily all of the adults are as literate as they should be. And so it's just through volunteers and stuff, they have people sign up and they basically tutor and mentor students.
Is that a program just specifically for Tennessee, or is it a nationwide thing?
So just an
that just has a chapter here?
It's a nationwide thing, and it's in Tennessee. A lot of them are like nationwide things that are in Tennessee. Like I was looking up after I looked for like Tennessee stuff for a while, and like stuff wasn't really coming up in Google, I looked up like top organizations, and I found out like a ton of them are in Tennessee because we have such a bad, schooling and education system. And I found TNTP, and it's a national nonprofit, and it's all about the injustice of education, like inequality, and it's founded by teachers, and it works with like schools and teachers and students to like advance policies and practices to make sure that like teaching is well in every classroom, and it's not like a subpar, quality.
How do they go about doing that? Do they have like a...
Well, yeah, this is what I looked up. It's in Nashville and Memphis is like the main places that it is, and their funding model is completely blended. It's blended revenue, and so what it is it's...
Can you elaborate on that for a second?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay,
doing.
sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So teachers it's kind of like a good thing to have on your resume, I guess, when you're a teacher applying for a job. And so what happens is teachers who aren't finding work come to this program and they pay like a really small fee. And this organization works with clients and they train teachers to increase their ability, like for students to achieve and stuff, and they only let teachers enter the workforce or find jobs for teachers if they can enter a school and increase the students' ability to achieve. And so what they do is they basically like take in teachers, train them a bunch, and then put them in, our bad school systems, I guess, and like kind of have them be teaching assistants. And then if they improve the environment of the classroom, they find them a job within that school system. And it basically is just supposed to improve,
So it's basically like an accreditation sort of process that they have to go through before they enter in like the
workforce. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's how they're increasing, the quality of education in these areas that aren't doing so well. But they also receive federal grants. That's the other way they receive revenue, because these teachers, I guess, I think they basically pay like a one-time fee for like their training and all that stuff, and then obviously they receive a paycheck for all the work that they do as well, from whatever school they're placed in. And how they've made sure that this is actually a policy and like a practice that is working is they collect like a baseline of the test scores and all the kind of stuff going on in the schools, and then they create a plan of action, like how to place the teachers, where to place them, what things like need the help, and then they assess the improvement, like obviously later on down the road. But that's how they become so successful as like a top national one. And then I also found Tennessee Association for Education of Young Children, and these ones are new ones that I haven't put on the thing yet, but they're an advocate for the best care and development for young children, and they educate members, like I guess it's just like a program that you join, and you educate on legislation nationally, statewide, and locally to maintain like a voice within the community. And it basically just is a way for them to train and encourage like professional development. They're the reason I found them is because they're an organization that's partnered with Raise Your Hand Tennessee, and Raise Your Hand Tennessee is just a group of volunteers who volunteer to read and tutor and mentor children who aren't
Right.
able.
What was the name of the first one? The one that Raise Your Hand is partnered with?
Oh, Tennessee Association for Education of Young Children. And their website isn't that elaborate, and I didn't really have time to like sift through it all and like try and find another website or like something on it. But both of them like bring together nonprofits where it's needed in Tennessee and like educate the public, as well as tutor and mentor students or teachers, depending on like who's in need. But yeah.
Since a lot of what you looked into is teachers voicing their own opinions, what do you think are some really salient points coming from teachers about how to improve our schools?
Wait, pardon me?
Since would you say that a lot of the organizations
Were for
basically
teachers?
like made up of teachers, right?
Yeah.
Was there like some main points that kept being struck upon, like maybe that were like headlined or highlighted somehow about how to improve our schools?
A lot of it was like just professional development stuff. Just like, I mean, I know that we did it at my school where they had professional development days, where rather than just like conferences and listening in on how to like improve your classroom, actually like having workshops and like conferences. And I'm pretty sure there's like, I mean, each one that I looked, like website I looked at, most of them had like conference and workshop tabs. And it was like things that teachers could sign, or like any member could sign up for. And a lot of joining these things were just like a click and then you joined the organization and stuff. But then there are some with fees, which I guess pay for like their conferences and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, mainly just like it's all professional development, just how to increase the atmosphere within schools,
Was there much hubbub about needing more money from the government?
most of the funding was, I mean, that I found was all like grants and stuff. So it was like all grants that they had gotten from like certain things. And then some, like I told you before, was that they had to pay a fee to join the organization, and then from then on. But no, it wasn't really saying like the reason these schools are so bad is because we don't have funding. It's more of like we need more ideas and innovations for, I don't know, the classroom, so that teachers actually are doing their jobs and students are wanting to learn, kind of a thing.
Somebody have any questions for Carla?
Alright, I've had a hectic couple of weeks, so I did not get much time looking up business taxes. I try to get very specific. I'm trying to find like specific businesses and what kind of taxes they were like having, and I couldn't find that, so I broadened it up and found the Tennessee tax code for businesses. So that was very nice, just to see like what their general outline was. There are several great pages. I have like a nice little presentation on Google Drive, but there's 3 main pages that I had outlined that I'm waiting to, it was like 14, 21, but it was about where, like, when they get taxed, how much money will get allocated to the local. So it was a state tax, and then it talked about how it would be watered down to local. 2, it talked about if you got a property tax and how it got transferred to a state school system and what the benefits of you doing that were.
When you say state school system, what exactly do you mean? Like
well,
university?
No, it was K through 12.
Okay.
And
is that the BEP program? A basic education program or something like that? I think that's one way the state funnels money into it. Go on, sorry.
it didn't go about that.
Okay.
That paper, but I was waiting to it all restarted. But okay, I'll talk about my other 2 papers. So Mark Listis was talking about how in Germantown there's a new school system, and I think they had like voted in to do a municipal school system, just like Chattanooga. And it was a late email, so I didn't get much time about that.
Sure.
But one thing that I did find was they changed their way their school board was like elected. So they had like the school, like the municipal board had a ton of events to help possible candidates like go through a campaign process and really help them through the financials, campaigns, fundraising, and all that stuff, so that they could get more like qualified people that were qualified, but they were just scared of having to put in all the work of a campaign, trying to figure out how to run a successful campaign. So it'll really help train more people how to become.
Those people who sit on the municipal school boards?
Right.
How is that different, like the funding? Because I know that Germantown, I think, is part of the city schools, which just got brought into the same loop as Memphis County schools. So how is it like a portion of the municipal funding or the municipal taxes? I guess that's what they'd be deciding on, right? How to fund their own school.
Right. And of course I didn't.
Yeah.
Which are good.
It's the questions we ask, right?
Hold on. Here we go. All right. Got it. All right. So. Can't remember what my third one was. It was. also wanted me to look at like legislative like proposals that some states are going through to help raise money. And one thing that Nevada's doing is they're taxing businesses that are making more than $1 million annually. But there's a lot of like hesitation about that because a lot of people are hesitant about raising taxes on businesses that are already struggling. But it would supposedly raise $800 million for state taxes, so it would just provide a lot more capabilities for the state school system to get money from, because
And that would be like 100% for the schools.
right. And they also like talked about just, well, it didn't have to go to, they were talking about like public health, safety, but like it was called the education initiative, so it really was trying to focus on education, and like it would really just help all the state systems, and it's not voted on yet, so there's just a possibility. But
Do they have any like plan on how it's going to be distributed to different counties and different schools, like based on their needs?
I mean, it's just like a proposal, so they really haven't gotten into specifics yet. So it's just like all it really was just like, this is how we're gonna get the money, and this
Not
is
necessarily what they're going to do with it.
right. They just had an overall idea about like, we wanted to go to education, we wanted to like go from the businesses into education. It wasn't yet. They didn't have any like overlying like, this is exactly where it's going to go, because it's not going to go into effect till like 2014 if everything goes right. So
It's still actually pretty stable, so.
yeah.
Okay, cool. And if we want to start with yours, the first thing I noticed was the first pro was that it had like a competitive business model, but then the first con was that potential privatization of education. So, and something I picked up on the discussion of Christian's venture capitalists is, it seems like what you want to do is turn like the education of teachers and like the development of the curriculum into a business model, but then not make the offering of education itself a product. You know, if you want to have like these educational materials and those are your product, but you don't want to like knowledge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to find like a medium in between, because like having all like, you know, like business model and just like privatization of everything like has its drawbacks, and like things like going to school and like getting educated shouldn't have the same connotation as like running, like a school is a business, but like we don't really look at it that way until you like get into a university where you like pay high tuition. But when you're in public school, like you're not really like paying for an education because it's public school and it should be like available for everyone. But when you think about like a privatized education, like you always have to put like a price tag on it, and it's just like
line to toe, right?
Yeah, you just have to find that medium.
One thing that seemed really strong were basically the programs that focused on like reevaluating teachers and using performance assessment techniques, that sort of thing. Do you agree?
Yeah, because I feel like in schools, like everything in school starts with your teachers, and like you remember teachers that are really great and are the ones that like make you want to learn. And like no matter like whether you're in public school or private school, like you have great teachers and you have terrible teachers, and you want to go to school for like your great teachers. And it's about opening up the classroom for like people, not just like upgrading education, but you also have to like make it more interesting for people to like learn, and like they want to like, they still need to want to come to school. And I feel like that's all about the teachers and like the way that they teach and like the tools that they have accessible to them.
It sounds like they need to like, the incentive for education isn't the same as it used to be, perhaps, and it's not so much of a tangible thing. It's a really long-term investment. So.
Was yours the one that was like the 20-year investments, right?
Yeah, it was like the programs that are teaching they're taking like the math and science, and like NASA has one and PBS and Intel, and they're teaching teachers, or people who are going to become teachers in a way that's like more extensive than just like an education degree. Because like, I don't know, my roommate is an education major, and like listening to her talk about it, like when you like look at it, she like works at schools, and literally like anyone can become a teacher, and most of them, like most people she talked about, hate teaching, and they're like there's no incentive for them to like make it enjoyable for like the students, and that's why they hate school.
Like we need to like vet out these like stragglers, right? That sort of thing. The Intel program, the 10-year program, the $200 million from Congress, was that all that was put into the product or the program, or was it something like a meet you halfway sort of thing?
Let me look at the description. It says Intel provides training for more than 100,000 U.S. math and science teachers over the next 3 years, with elementary school teachers participating in intensive 80-hour professional development math courses and teachers receiving new web-based instruction and collaboration tools. It's training in all 50 states, and it's just they're like they put $200 million of cash into a program just to improve the quality of teachers and like give them more abilities to like learn different teaching.
To me, it sounds like, along with that, and then also with the one that I think you mentioned, like the Tennessee Association for Education of young children. I don't know, that's a really long name. And a lot of other ones, they seem like a lot of their funding, like to improve like the education system. It sounds like they're like investing a lot in the development of like professional educators, like a higher standard for professionalism and like your public school educators. Even though yeah, so I don't...
Like, it seems simple, right? Like, maybe if we had people doing their jobs better, then we'd have a better result.
Yeah, but my question is that if we're going to fix this problem with funding and how the education is, like the public schools are funded, is it better to like put our money into developing professionals, like as educators, or just giving money to the schools to
That's the idea
have
that
better...
I'm getting, the former.
Huh?
The former is the idea that I'm getting, because it seems like just pumping money into schools, like maybe if we just raise the amount of money that we spend per student, we'll have a better outcome. But as noted, this was that word that I commented on. But yeah, it's just like the charter school that was doing so great is like $5,000 per student spending. So it seems like if we invest on the front end, on the input, then we'll get a better output.
I think it's mainly professional development that really needs the increase in funding.
Yeah. Let's take a break real quick because we need to change out the name. Hold that thought.
I'm going to hold it so hard.
Hold on to it. All right, well, we don't take all the gushers.
You're not recycling.
You can recycle one of me. Recycle one red.
Alright guys, let's go over like what both the groups talked about real quick. We'll make it really quick just to kind of see what we're all thinking of. We kind of decided that the best way to kind of approach all this is to have more in-service days for teachers. Okay, well, maybe I should explain better about how we plan on improving like the funding for the public schools and everything, and we are doing it in more of an indirect way instead of just like throwing money at schools and say, hey, here, create these programs. we believe that like in-service days as well as programs for professional development of teachers is the most cost-efficient way because it doesn't tack on any like extra like after-school program costs. And then your in-service days, we kind of determined that like if you had full days for in-service days instead of just like a half in-service day and have like another half day of school, you wouldn't have to run the buses, and then you wouldn't have the cost for lunches and everything. So it'd be really efficient just to have more in-service days. Carly was talking about how in Michigan, is she from Michigan?
Yes.
In Michigan, they have in-service days once a month, and it works out pretty well for them. So it's a pretty plausible thing. I mean, if you tell teachers like, hey, we need to have more of this so we can like have more professional development for these in-service days, and then it also creates a better like school community and have everybody like working towards the same goal of educating your children better.
I think in Knox County they have like 3 or 4 in-service days before the year even begins.
Yeah.
I don't know about like during though.
Yeah, it's important to have it like you know spaced out in
Forced out,
between
yeah.
though, because I mean you might have problems that come up and you can't wait until you know the beginning of next semester or whatever to start to address these problems. They need to be addressed now.
Because that's when teachers are coming up with the problem. That's when they're noticing problems. That's when they're noticing things that need to be fixed.
Yeah, and then the other thing we talked about is just like programs for the professional development of teachers. There was one that was talking about, what was it, the Tennessee Association for Education of Young Children. I just butchered that really bad. But that was the one that they develop teachers really well. And then Carly also mentioned a lot of other programs that are either focused on like student development or teacher development. So we think that both of them are really important, but there definitely could be more incentive for the two things. So that's something that we can think about and develop.
We definitely focused on more on the teacher side of things, and on the main problems we found were not so, well, sort of like not enough money, but more so than that, the way the money was being spent. So we decided that it should be spent on teachers, and like under teachers we'll throw in like not just like the humans themselves, but the curriculum and the way that we decide which curriculum we need, and when we decide that we need it, the actual technology involved in school, and then the teachers themselves. So we think that what really struck me was Christian's remark that Sweden, one of the most like socialized, what? Egalitarian, yeah. Some people call it socialism. But one of the most egalitarian-esque, like economically committed societies has found that, like, you know what, if maybe we remove all regulations on schools and privatize it, then it will actually do better. And so we kept coming back to private market solutions for education. So I think that, and we were also remarking on, I think our final piece of policy that we come up with is going to have a lot of different things going on in it, and it's going to need to have those overarching themes about funding and the actual structure of the school systems, but I think we'll also need those things about like the day-to-day and how individual schools ought to schedule their time and their time with the students, such as in-service days and focusing on professional development. So we figured that I couldn't even give a percentage, but basically it should be increased funding or funding reform should be split on curriculum and professional development for teachers. It's probably about like 80%, those two things, and then 20 or 30% on students and other things, because we figure it's like 2/3 of the problem is teachers and how well educated they are and how ready they are to teach the kids.
The only problem I can see running into this is having us as students saying teachers need to develop themselves better. So it's kind of a pretentious thing, but I mean, I think as long as we can show some
Well, it seems like, and of course, the research that we presented tonight, it's never all that's out there to be had, knowledge-wise. But it seems like a lot of the prominent solutions about education reform are aimed towards private market solutions, continuing teacher education, and professional development for teachers. And really, I think that is what's going to have the trickle-down effect, not like, oh, if we give a bunch of money to schools, it'll simply trickle down to better grades. I think investing in the front end on those two things primarily are what's going to give us better students, better, more committed individuals in our communities. So we'll close on that, and we'll meet next week to build on those topics.